Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see everyone. Welcome to the live stream, the first for our class. Uh, I hope everyone is doing well this evening. I hope everyone is getting ready to study. Spend the next little while getting ready to talk about the test, getting ready to study, getting ready to figure out how to study, and that's what I want to talk about first. Remember, you can ask questions by typing in the chat. I'll just start the chat just by saying something. So feel free to add questions in the chat. You can also ask questions in the by email. You can ask questions about content. You can ask questions about materials that we discussed. So please feel free to ask questions. Okay. Before questions come in, I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about what you guys should be doing in terms of studying, how you should be studying, how you should be thinking about the material. I want to say first and foremost, and this is something that I think we mentioned, I mentioned this in class before a number of times, but don't think that you need to memorize everything. You don't. You absolutely don't. Questions are not going to ask you for every single piece of knowledge about the Hittites or the Mycenaeans or the Minoans or ancient civilizations in Mesopotamia. That's not what the test is about. The test isn't there for you just to regurgitate information. The test is there for you to take the information and to apply that information. A question is going to ask you for one or maybe two examples, and that's basically it, to illustrate your point. The test is not going to ask you to rehash the entirety of everything we learned. The test is going to ask, how do you take specific pieces of information and figure out what to do with those pieces of information. Now, to help, as we said, we're gonna, tomorrow in class, you're gonna create your cheat sheets for the exam. The cheat sheet is not going to have everything on it, but pieces of information that you think are absolutely key. So, how should you study? The best way to study, I think, is not to think about it in terms of just the content, but in terms of themes. We've talked about, as we discussed the ancient civilizations, and as we talked about the Bronze Age, we've been talking about key themes, which bring a lot of the material into discussion with each other. On the test, you're going to have questions that ask you to compare and contrast different elements of ancient civilizations to each other, and it's going to ask you to compare and contrast ancient civilizations into the Bronze Age. Talk about continuity, how things continue, and how things changed over time. And so the materials that you are studying that you need to think about, you should think about it in those contexts in terms of the themes that we discussed. We talked about geography. We talked a lot about culture in a very expansive meaning, art. We talked about language. We talked about religion. All of these aspects fall into the broad category of culture. We talked about trade. We talk about trade both in the as a defining element of the Bronze Age. And we talked about trade and talked about economics in the context of specific civilizations and specific cultures. So that's what you should be thinking about in terms of the material, in terms of the content. When you're thinking about it, when you're looking at the information, when you're going through information about ancient Mesopotamia, when you're going through the information about Egypt and about the Indus Valley civilizations, and then as you're talking about the Bronze Age cultures that you read about, that we talked about in class, think about it in terms of the themes and the topics that we discussed. Think about it and arrange the information. And I would do this I would create a chart, basically. I think is one of the best ways to think about this. where you're comparing, you're contrasting the different civilizations and the different cultures when it comes to areas of economics and trade, when it comes to culture, when it comes to geography, when it comes to trade and engagement. And I think if you think along those lines, it's going to help you structure the material, I think, in a much more simplistic manner. It's going to provide a very direct line of thinking, because if you're thinking a lot, and if you're thinking about all of this material, and if you're thinking about the Hittites, you're thinking about Canaanites, you're thinking about the Kassites, you're thinking about the Mycenaeans, you're thinking about the Minoans, you're thinking about the Hittites, you're thinking about all of these cultures and all of these civilizations. You're thinking about the Phoenicians. It can get very, very confusing very, very quickly, and you can begin to confuse one culture with the next, and you can begin to confuse the way in which different cultures engage with each other, or different cultures exist, excuse me, and that can be really, really difficult and really hard. And so, when you're looking at this material, again, create distinct lines, create distinct categories. Create a category of art, for instance, where you talk about Hittite art versus Mycenaean art, or Hittite versus Minoan art versus Mycenaean art. You talk about language. You talk about language in ancient Mesopotamia. You talk about the Akkadians. You talk about language in the Hittite Empire. You talk about language in the Mycenaean Empire. You talk about language in the Minoan Empire. You talk about religion. You talk about economics. You talk about geography and how geography affected the different cultures and civilizations. Think about geography as it manifests, as it appears in places such as, and the effect that geography has in Mesopotamia compared to Egypt, compared to the Indus Valley, compared to the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, compared to the Phoenicians. When you're thinking about it in those lines, you can begin, I think, to structure the material in a much more straightforward manner, as opposed to just pulling things in. And that's how I think you should begin to think about the material. Even when you're tomorrow in class, as you're creating your cheat sheets, you may want to arrange the material in that way on the cheat sheet. Now, you don't have a lot of space on the cheat sheet; it's not going to be a huge amount of room. The cheat sheet is not there. This test is not an open book test. It's not there to. I'm not giving you the opportunity to use all of your notes on this, but because it's a decent amount of information and a decent amount of content, I want to make sure that you have the ability to begin to put together some of the material that you may not be, you may think is going to be important on the cheat sheet. So when you're thinking about studying, when you're thinking about the material, as you're going through all the material, that's what you need to think about. That's what you need to begin to. That's what you need to really keep in the back of your mind. Okay. Okay. All right. So we can move to questions if you guys want to. At this point, that's what when you're thinking about the questions, that's what you should be. When you're thinking about the material, that's what you should be thinking about. If you guys have questions about specific pieces of content, email me. You can add materials in the chat, which is fine. You can do it that way. First question, Zach Moskowitz, what is the format of the test? So that's on the review sheet again. To go over it, the first part are questions based on the reading that you have. Remember, there's a reading. The reading is on haiku. It's on the same page as the sorry guys, it's on the same page as the review sheet. You'll get the reading on the test. As I said before, we're not going to go over the reading. It's fairly straightforward about religion in Mesopotamia. But please do the reading ahead of time. You cannot come into the test without the reading, and simply be prepared to take that portion of the test without reading it in advance. Again, you'll get a copy of the reading on the exam in the same exact way that it appears on the haiku page. So you'll have the ability to do that, and yeah. So that's the first part. You'll have probably 4 questions, maybe 4 out of 5, And in the second part, you'll have short answer questions. And the short answer questions will again ask you to think about the material in comparison with each other. Um, and you'll have more likely than not, you'll have a choice in the second part. You'll get partial credit on questions. It's not a very long test. It's probably going to be a total of 9, maybe 10 questions. Maybe that's a lot, I think. Um, in part because you have to sort of think about the material also. I can't just give you a question and expect you to like that remember everything and start writing. You're going to need some time to recall and structure it a little bit, and that's fine. Um, and so that's going to be that's the structure of the exam. And I don't give extra credit on the exam. Okay. Will the stuff today in class, the ancient Israelites, be on the test, Avi? Yes, it will be. What was done in class today will be on the test, and the beginning materials on the ancient Israelites. For classes, it really got to just um, um, it got to um, basically what we can know, what we can't know from looking at stuff in the or from finding stuff about Jews outside of the Torah itself, finding material there. Okay. What do we need to know from the early civilizations? So I'm not going to reteach everything now. That's definitely not what we're going to be doing here. Again, what you need to know from the early civilizations is everything we did in class. In addition, you need to know the civilization that you and your group researched, as well as the basic outline of what the students in the other groups answered and how they answered the question. So if you recall, when you were comparing and contrasting your early civilizations, you filling out the chart, you have to take material from the other civilizations that were researched by your classmates. So you need to know the basic aspects of those, of what they researched, and then again, what we did in class. That's what you need to know about those ancient civilizations. Okay. Will the test be out of 100? Yes, the test will be out of 100. Just makes it easier, and because I'm not very good at math, it just makes it easier for me. Okay. Okay. Other questions, guys. Other questions. Again, if you can't add in the chat, please feel free to add. Please feel free to email me. Okay. So you should please feel free. Iced coffee. Good stuff. Only way to keep me up at night, guys. This is something of a tradition on the live streams. Coffee. This is iced coffee with almond milk mixed with coffee. So it's coffee on coffee. So cheers, everybody. Okay. Other questions, guys? Other questions? Other questions? Oops, sorry. Just getting a text. What is the most important thing to know on the test? Thank you, Yair. It's a great question. What's the most important thing to know? Well, the most importantly for you guys to understand is that the test is not the end-all be-all of your existence as a student. Yes, I know it's stressful, and yes, I know it's difficult. But remember, you guys have done a lot of other work in the first quarter, and that does absolutely count. They are absolutely, it's important stuff. It's the first test. Sometimes you have a bad day, and sometimes things don't go well, and that's fine. That's okay. We'll get through it. And so I understand it's stressful. I understand it's difficult. I understand you are putting in a lot of work, or you will put in a lot of work to study. And sometimes that's going to pay off, and sometimes it's not. I think that's important to know. That's important to keep in mind. So that's just something going into the test year. But in terms of thinking about the things to know, what you what you really want to think about is how to compare and contrast and find similarities and differences. Beyond just knowing, don't think about this just as knowing stuff. Think about this as having the ability to say, I know something about all of these different cultures and civilizations, about trade, about economics, about whatever, um, and figuring out how to put it into conversation with each other. That's what you need to think about. Okay. Okay. A couple of questions via email. Can you please explain the Amarna letters? Sure. Thank you, Daniela. The Amarna letters are a series of letters that were found in Egypt. The Amarna letters are about 300 or so letters where they provide for a view of what the Bronze Age is about. The Amarna letters are a series of diplomatic correspondences, meaning they are letters written between government officials in Egypt, and all over the Mediterranean, all over the ancient Near East. In addition, there are letters there between leaders from other cultures and civilizations. So in all the classes we read we read one of the Amarna letters where the Hittite king is talking to the Mycenaean king. And so what the Amarna letters are basically a series of diplomatic correspondences. Most of them are focused on. Most of the letters involve one of the Egyptian government officials and other government officials from other cultures and civilizations. But there are other cultures and civilizations that are sending letters between the two that are included in the Amarna letters. So the Amarna letters allow us to see content, that allow us to see material, that allow us to see how Bronze Age cultures and civilizations are talking to each other. Okay. Okay, some more questions on the chat over here. We need to know about all the early civilizations or only the one our group research? That's from Eitan Weinberg. No, you need to know the civilization that you researched, and obviously because you researched one specific civilization, you know a lot more about that, and you know that really well in depth. But then you also have to know the basic aspects, the outlines, the basic information that the other groups included about the civilizations that they researched. Now, some of that we went over in class, right? So for Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, for Egypt, we went over a lot of that in class, but we didn't go over all of it. So you have to go through what the other students went through, discussed in their in the answers to their questions. So you do need to know something about the other cultures and civilizations that we didn't cover in class, and that you specifically may not have researched on your own, but researched with what the other students in the class researched. Okay. Okay. Will the test be evenly spread with the different chapters? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Okay. Do we need to know trade routes? You need to know. This is from Zachary Moskowitz. You need to know the trade routes of the different civilizations. You need to know something about the trade routes. I wouldn't say. I would just give it a very basic. I would say just a basic understanding of where trading was happening. So to know that the Mycenaeans are trading basically around the Eastern Mediterranean. They're looking, as we talked about with the war with Troy, they're looking to get into other parts of Asia. You should know the Phoenicians are trading on a much wider scope, trading all over the Mediterranean. Those are the basic contours of the trading routes that you should know. Okay. From Daniela, is there any textbook reading we have to read for the test except for the one on haiku? No, except for the ones that were assigned. No. Jared, to what specificity do we need to know each civilization? Again, you don't. What I've been saying up to this point is you don't need to know everything. You don't. I mean, and I don't think you'll be able to study everything and learn everything. I think that's asking a lot. But again, what you should be thinking about is don't think about don't think about one civilization at a time. Think about the way that the civilizations can be compared to each other. So when you think about, instead of thinking about it from the point of view of civilization, think about it from the civilization. Think about it from the point of view of cultures. Think about it in terms of government. Think about it in terms of economics. Think about it in terms of art. Think about it, and let that guide you in piecing together pieces of the information. Okay. So again, as you're studying this, think about the categories and then pick out the material as it relates to the categories. Okay, and again, the categories, the themes are arts and different parts of culture. I think to think about it that way, I think it's going to be very, very useful. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Is there partial credit for questions? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's always partial credit for questions. Don't worry about that. Okay. You should absolutely partial credit for questions. Okay. Let's see, more questions. Which civilization used the Nile River? That is Egypt. Okay. From Lee, how long will be the writing portion? How many questions? Again, it's probably going to be, in the first part, you'll have 4 or 5 questions. In the second part, you'll have 4 or 5 questions to answer. 8, 9 questions, maybe 10 altogether. Okay. Yeah. Shoshana, is it enough to study all my notes? No, you need to study your notes, but you also need to study. You need to study the. You need to read through the Bronze Age. It's the documents on haiku, the Bronze Age cultures outlines. You need to read through the textbook as it relates to the culture of the ancient civilization that you studied. You need to read through the answers that the other students in the class provided about their cultures and civilizations. So you need to read through all of that also. What are the percents of test percentage of information for each topic? I don't know yet, Erin. That's very, very specific. I don't know. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Here we go. Okay, more questions. Let's see. Okay. More questions. How many questions will there be on the test? I think I just answered that. There are, again, we're going to answer between 8 and 10 questions together. Okay. Let's see, more questions from email. Just bringing up my email now. Let's see. Okay, more questions. Who united the northern and southern Egyptian kingdom? That is Menes. We said Menes is the one who united the 2 kingdoms. Okay. For Bronze Age, when you say culture, what are you referring to? Well, we talked a lot about different aspects of Bronze Age culture. We're talking about art. We're talking about language. We're talking about writing. That's all we're talking about when it comes to that's what we're talking about. We're talking about culture in the Bronze Age. Okay, good. Let's see, looking at more from the email. From Daniela, what language do the Mesopotamian people speak? We don't know what they spoke. We don't know what they spoke, but we know that they wrote. We know that they developed a form of, or they used cuneiform, developed Akkadian as their written language, and then that again, an offshoot of Akkadian is Babylonian. Remember, and we talked about how we have interpreted Akkadian, Babylonian. Similarly, how we interpreted hieroglyphics in Egypt along a similar pathway. And then think about that. And again, this is the way in which you should think about the material. Think about how historians, archaeologists were able to decipher that, and they were not able to decipher, for instance, Linear A from the Minoans. So that would be a good way of comparing and contrasting what we do know and what we don't know. Okay. I'm tired, guys. I don't know about you. I'm sure you guys are exhausted after studying bio. My suggestion would be after this, take it easy and go to sleep early tonight. Okay. For the Hittites, I have in my notes that they got there by walking. What do you mean? So we talked about the Hittites as being one of the Indo-Europeans. Remember, the Indo-Europeans are a group of nomadic people from the steppes. The steppes are a mountainous area where sort of Asia and Europe meets together in the very, 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 very eastern part of Europe and the very western part of Asia. They're nomadic. Sorry. They were nomadic people, and one of those groups of a number of those people of Indo-Europeans made their way south to what's modern day Turkey. And those are the Hittites. And they get there around the year 1800, 1750 BC. And as we said, because the Hittites are, at least initially, they're a nomadic people, they don't have their own distinct culture. Yes, they have some aspects of culture, but because they were nomads, being nomadic doesn't lend itself to creating a very structured cultural life. So as the Hittites come into what was the Babylonian kingdom, they actually take a lot from the Babylonians in terms of language, in terms of government, in terms of a lot of different things, in terms of art. Well, to be sure, Hittite art is really about war and conflict, because that's what they were really, really good at. So that's how the Hittites got to modern day Turkey. Okay, good. All right. The Amarna letters written in Akkadian. Yes, the Amarna letters are written in Akkadian. Akkadian becomes the international language for the Bronze Age. So everyone is writing Akkadian. The fact that these letters were found in Egypt and yet they were written in Akkadian was very, very strange. And that was really, really important. Okay. Okay, good. Why don't we know how to translate Linear A? We don't know how to translate Linear A because we don't have anything that gives us any sense of indication of what the language actually means. So again, with Akkadian, with ancient Akkadian, with hieroglyphics, we have translation of those languages into known and contemporary languages. With Linear A, we don't. We have the relationship between Linear A and Linear B, but as we said, Linear B is developed by the Mycenaeans, is actually much closer to Greek than it is to Linear A. And so yes, there are there is some influence of Linear A on Linear B, but Linear B is much closer to Greek than it is to Linear A. So we don't know how to interpret. As such, we don't know how to interpret Linear A. Okay. Okay. Do we need? Let's see. What is the significance of Akkadian? Again, I think we just described Akkadian as the international language. Okay. Which information we don't need to study? Again, if it's on the review sheet, that's what you need to know. If it's not on the review sheet, I'm not going to ask it. That's the best answer I can give to you. Okay. Will there be multiple questions inside of each question? There might be. There might be, 2 questions inside of 1 question. That's a possibility. Um, you know, Absolutely. That's very much a possibility. Sorry guys for yawning. I'm just exhausted. Yeah. Other questions? Are my tests straightforward? Again, Shoshana, they're straightforward in that I'm not going to trick you, and I'm not going to ask you for things I'm not going to ask you for an obscure fact that I may have mentioned offhand one day, or that I slipped in. I'm not going to, I'm not going to ask you just to tell me what that obscure fact was. The questions are going to be geared so that you have maximum ability to answer them and to use different pieces of information to be able to answer them. I'm not necessarily looking for each question for one specific answer. Need more coffee. And so the questions should be geared towards giving you the opportunity to answer them in a variety of ways, so that there isn't only one specific answer. Okay. Will the Neolithic Revolution be on the test? No, it will not. Ooh, that's good. What is the development of culture referring to the Minoans? So in the Minoans, we talked about art. We talked about language. Those are both particularly important as they relate to the Minoans. Just looking back to see, for instance, when it comes to the Minoans, at least in the Bronze Age cultures outlined, there's a discussion of architecture also, palaces, and specifically a little more information also about writing and language in Minoan culture. So that is found in the Bronze Age cultures that you read. Okay. What information is allowed on the cheat sheet? Again, so that's from Jared. What you're going to put on the cheat sheet is information that you feel is relevant about the cultures and the civilizations that we talked about that could help you on the test. And so that meaning, the cheat sheet is giving you the opportunity to put information down that you have to study. So it can be anything that we discussed. You don't have to. There isn't, at least for the cheat sheet. I don't think there's anything there's nothing off the top of my head right now that I can think of that you can't put on there. Because again, the point of the cheat sheet is to give you a reference point for some of the information that that you could use in thinking about the questions on the exam. Okay. What is we do after the test from your ear? Okay. We're going to continue next week talking about the ancient Israelites, then talk about the Persian, the Babylonian, the Assyrian empires. That's going to take us into ancient Greece at the beginning of the second quarter. That's what we're going to be doing. Okay. Unrelated to the test, but what is our quarter grade based off of? It's based off of the other assignments that we've done. It's based on the in-class assignments that you've done, the homework assignments that you've done, and the test, and that's it. So the first quarter grade is basically like a progress report. That you're doing up to this point. That's basically what it is. So, yeah. Okay. What did most of the Indo-Europeans speak or write? We don't know, actually. I don't know what language the Indo-Europeans spoke, what they wrote in. It seems that they developed specific languages where they traveled to. As we saw based on the map, they were traveling to different parts of the world. The Hittites were traveling south, and they moved to what is modern-day Turkey. You have some moving to parts of Asia, moving east, and moving into India. You have some moving west into Europe, parts of Europe. So, and they're all really taking from the cultures and civilizations that they're getting to. Okay. Okay. Good. More questions, guys. More questions. More questions. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we need to know what we don't know for each culture? Yeah, no, I mean you should know what we don't know about the cultures. Yes, you should know that the answers to those questions. Again, in basic terms. Okay. I'm not gonna again, you're not gonna see a question on the test. What don't we know about different cultures about ancient civilization about cultures in ancient civilizations? That's not a question I'm gonna ask. But that's something that is good to have, good information to have. What's commerce? Commerce is economics, the economy, trade. Shoshana, that's what commerce is. Commerce is commerce is a synonym for trade. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Good. What is a nomadic culture? A nomadic culture, Josh, is a culture that doesn't have, meaning nomadic are people who don't have a settled place to live, don't have a settled food supply. But what I was talking about when it comes to nomadic culture is the fact that you have the Indo-Europeans who don't have a specific culture because they are nomadic. It's difficult to imagine the creation of a complex system of cultures, art, language, architecture, simply because they're nomadic and they're moving around. Okay. Just to clarify, Gavi, the Neolithic Revolution is not on the test. That is correct. The Neolithic Revolution is not on the test. Again, if it's not on the review sheet, it is not going to be on the test. You will not see it on the examination, to be very perfectly clear. Okay, if it's not on the review sheet, it's not on the test. The test is not here to test on everything that we talked about over the course of the year. That's not fair. It's too much. We just, that's not what we're doing. It's okay. That's what we're doing. That's not the point of the test. Okay. Other questions, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like I want to go to sleep already. I don't know about you guys. The following civilizations, the only ones on the test, and you didn't list them, so you can go ahead and list them. Oh yeah. Other questions. Other questions. So, nothing. No more questions. I know you guys are probably just getting to the material now after studying bio. I think some of you may have had a knock test or something like that. No, that was a test, but it's fine. Okay. I was absent in class today. We will be making the sheet in class tomorrow. Cheat sheet, yes. Yeah, we're gonna be making a cheat sheet. You will be making a cheat sheet in class tomorrow. Yeah, you're gonna be able to use it's gonna be half a page. It's going to be half a page worth of material. and or a little more than a half page worth of material. But yes, you'll be able to bring this to the test. But as I mentioned, I must approve of it before you bring it to class. So I know I think Leah said today that she's not going to be in class tomorrow. It's fine, but I have to see it before the test. So if you're not in class tomorrow, if you're sick, if you're somehow, you get sick overnight, you're not coming to class tomorrow, you can still make a cheat sheet at home, but I have to see it. You have to have my approval to use it on the exam before you actually use it. Okay? So if you're not going to school tomorrow, you have to email it to me, and I have to give you the approval of using it. Okay? Other questions? I feel like we can just do this for class every single day. We hold class for 40 minutes, and then every night we should just have a live stream. So it's great, right? Another 40 minutes, another hour or so after class would be a great thing to do. I'm sure all of you guys would love it. We need to know about the Rosetta Stone for the test. Yeah, we talked about the Rosetta Stone. You need to know what the Rosetta Stone does, why it was so important, what it allowed us to do, and so its impact for understanding language from ancient cultures. So Enav, I listened to Civilizations a couple times. Did you receive them? I did not. If you want to email them to me, you can email them to me. Yeah. Whew. I forgot who asked this question today in class, one of the classes, but if you do have questions over the weekend, you can email me. I can't promise I'm going to get back to you right away. But if you do have questions over the weekend, you can email me, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. So I just want to make sure that y'all know that. You can email me over the weekend, and I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible over the weekend on Motzei Shabbos or on Sunday. Okay. Other questions? Other questions? Let's see. All right. Let's see. So have to answer your questions. Again, you are missing a couple. Specifically, the only one I think you're missing here. No, you're missing the Canaanites and the Kassites, which were in the reading, the Bronze Age cultures reading. So you do need to add those. Okay. Elon, we're going to have to know all the civilizations that we did in the class assignment for. Class assignment for what? The question ended. You're welcome, Enough. We didn't do that. Elon, if you can finish your question, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. Let's see. Additional questions, guys. Additional questions. Yeah, let's see what's going on. Oh, I forgot there's a football game tonight. I'm sure some of you have the football game on next to watching this. Obviously, this is more important than football game, clearly. Okay. Elon, the first in class assignments for everyone. Had their own group. Yeah, so I explained before, Elon. You have to know the ancient civilization that you studied. You have to know that, you have to know that well because you studied it, you researched it. then you need to be able to answer, but then your classmates answer the questions about their civilization. You need to know those answers too. And that's important. Again, what that means is that the information you have about the civilizations that your classmates studied and answer the questions for, it's not as in depth as what you studied. And additionally, and I mentioned this before, some of what your classmates studied, we talked about in class, and we discussed in class again, particularly as it relates to the Mesopotamians, as it relates to Egypt, as it relates to the Indus Valley. Okay, a couple more questions here. Do we need to know the geography of the civilizations? Yeah, of course, absolutely. Geography is important, and you need to be able to know the geography of the civilizations. Do we need to memorize all of the dates of each civilization? You need to know the basic dates of each civilization. If you're off by 100 years, that's fine. Don't worry about what the key aspects of the dates, and this is important, is to keep a chronology, right? To know when things started, when things began, and to know who came first and who came afterwards. That's sort of why dates are important for now. Now, that's going to shift a little bit as we move forward, but for this exam, again, if you tell me that the Minoans were in existence from 2100 to 1500, fine, that's not a problem. If you are telling me the Mycenaeans came before the Minoans, that's a bigger problem, because that's showing you don't really understand the dynamic and relationship between those two cultures. Okay. Danielle, where can we find our classmates' answers? You can find it on the class haiku page. If you go to the Ancient Civilizations page, let me just go check here. If you go to the class haiku page, and you go to Unit 2 Civilization, and then it says Early Civilizations in Class Project. And if you go to your class's group, you'll see the Early Civilizations questions and answers, and all of the questions and answers are there. And if you have trouble if you have trouble finding it, then I'll try to help you in class tomorrow. Okay. So yeah. Okay. From Daniela, what should we do to start studying? So again, I mentioned this earlier on in the live stream. What I think you should be doing is thinking about categories. What I think you should be doing is thinking about the points of comparison and topics. Again, we talked about the different themes. We talked about geography. We talked about culture. We talked about, and within culture, you have religion, you have art, you have writing. Think about the economy, economics, and trade. The way in which different cultures engage, and different people were talking to each other and discussing with each other. So. Sorry. So yeah, so that's what you should be doing in terms of thinking. That's what you should be doing in terms of thinking. In terms of thinking of how to study. Okay. Okay, let's see. Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Do we need to know a timeline? Again, what I just described enough was, yeah, you should know what comes, which of the cultures, how the cultures are relate to each other in terms of chronology. Yeah, we talked about, you should be able to say, look, we've been known through the Mycenaeans, through the Hittites, just to give you an example. Are they living at the same points in time? That's something that we've read about, that we discussed a bit in class. So yeah, absolutely. What was the other civilization after the Canaanites? The Kassites, the Babylonians. That was the other one mentioned in the reading. Okay. Do we need to know about Hammurabi? Yes, you need to know about Hammurabi. Yeah, we need to know about Hammurabi, who Hammurabi is, what Hammurabi, why he was so important, what he attempted to do within the context of the Babylonian Empire. So yeah, that's what you need to know. For Hammurabi, again, what he was attempting to do, what he was looking to accomplish. That's what you need to know about Hammurabi. Exactly. Okay. Okay. Let's see, a couple more questions, and then we'll call it a night, guys. Do we have to know about the different arts from each civilizations? Yeah, I mean, you have to know about art in the different civilizations. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that. That's what you read about. Absolutely. Is there an essay part of the test, Benji? No. No, there is not. Look at the review sheet. It doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you what the. It doesn't tell you. The review sheet does not have a essay part. There is no essay on the exam. I don't like giving essays on the exam. I don't like giving essays on the exam. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? If not, I think we're going to call it a night. We've gone for about 55 minutes or so. Any other questions? Nope. Oh yeah. I don't know. It's time to get some sleep, guys. That's what I think. Okay. If you have more questions over the weekend, I'm happy to answer. Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks. I hope this was helpful. Don't freak out. Relax, study, obviously. Thanks, guys. Have a great night, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.